And I would like to invite our panel moderators, Davinia Hernández-Leo and Viktoria Pammer-Schindler. Are you there, Davinia, Viktoria?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm also here. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Very good. So I will give the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. It's my pleasure to be moderating this panel together with Viktoria. And I will start introducing the first panelist. It's more than a pleasure. It's very special for me to introduce the first panelist, not only because he's amazing, as you said, Mikhail, because I know he's genuinely interested in the topic of PhD education. He's a full professor of telematics engineering and ex-dean of the doctoral school at his university of Valladolid in Spain. He has supervised a number of PhD students on TEL, including mine. So this is also so special for me to introduce him in this particular panel. I know he will be mentioning what are his current research interests. He will mention that, so I will just explain that he is also coordinator of a research group, GESICAMIC research group, which is an interdisciplinary group integrating over 20 researchers and practitioners from the field of information and communication technologies and pedagogy. Then he has participated in a number of research projects on TEL, co-author over 100 journals, papers and conference papers, and organizing workshops and symposia. He's especially active in organizing workshops and symposia in our community, different conferences such as ECTEL, the CSCL conference, etc. And the topics include also doctoral education and well-being in the activities that he organizes, contributing to our community. So, and Yannis, maybe we can proceed with the slides. Thank you for joining the panel.
Okay, so most has been said by Davinia with the general information. So my own education training is in engineering, and currently I've been being the coordinator of this research group for the last 25 years now. And just to give an idea of the ways that I have been doing research in multiple disciplines, started with handwriting, neural modeling, neural network estimation for handwriting, collaboration in learning and work, not only technological tools, but also conceptual, learning analytics and artificial intelligence, but with a focus on human-centered design approaches, and then on research methods, both in mixed methods, co-design, design-based research, and the use of research in authentic experiences. Okay, so these are I think that the 4 elements that define mostly my trajectory, and especially the journey through crossing boundaries. Okay, so some of the best practice and challenges that might be suggested is, and based on my own experience, is first, one long introductory course on research methodology in an ICT master and doctoral program. So this is one type of courses. And then the other thing is short workshops like the ones that have been presented with the JTELS events on different topics that are related to our field also. Mixed methods, for example, mobility, ethics, well-being. Going down to my own experience, probably good practices. I don't know if they are the best, but bi-weekly meetings of the PhD student with not only a one-to-one meeting, but with a broader supervising group. Then another thread has to do with joint work of students with different background both in experimentation, doing fieldwork, authoring papers, or peer tutoring. I think that these two elements are critical for our field, for doctoral education. And the last point is to organize, promote social activities at group level in which different expertise and different mindsets are merged, and that's trying to promote first the well-being and not being isolated, the classical element restriction of doctoral education, but especially in order to converging mindsets and traditions, disciplines. Okay, so these are just few practices that we may discuss later.
Yeah, thank you, Yannis. So I understand that these are also kind of indicating the challenges, no? Because the best practices are trying to address those challenges. We will indeed discuss more about this later. So now Viktoria continues.
Yeah, and I have the honor of welcoming and introducing Allison Littlejohn in our round. I'm just trying to see whether she's indeed here.
I am.
I'm seeing her. So Allison, a warm welcome. So Allison is a world-renowned researcher in educational technology with a lot of research on how learning occurs in massive open online courses and what open access learning means, and specifically maybe also for technologies for professional learning. Allison is now a professor of learning sciences at the University College London and the Institute of Education, which again has a worldwide leadership or a very high reputation in the field, where she's also a director now of the Knowledge Lab. Before that, she was also professor within the School of Education and the Dean of Learning and Teaching at the University of Glasgow. And Allison, alongside your career, you have supervised and mentored students and researchers at different career stages, but also you have worked on the institution side and making higher education, and there maybe also particularly technology-enhanced learning work. And so we're looking very much forward to your thoughts on educating doctoral students in that domain. And with that, a very warm welcome from my side, and I'm looking forward to your thoughts.
Well, thank you, Viktoria, for that very nice welcome. And it's such a pleasure to be here in the panel today. So my background, as you say, is in technology-enhanced learning, and particularly focusing on professional and digital learning, so how people use technologies for workplace learning, which of course is a growing area. And I've had the privilege of supervising a number of PhD students during my career. And if you go to the next slide, you will see something about the environment within which I'm currently supervising those students. So the UCL Knowledge Lab focuses on technology and society. It's much broader than education technologies. We look at all kinds of technologies in society, everything from health tech to visual arts, and we have resident artists within the lab. So you can see on this slide, it represents not all, but some of the disciplines within the Knowledge Lab. So for people coming in and studying with us, this can be really exciting, but it can also be quite daunting. And I think that's going to be a theme of what I say today about supervision and my experiences, because when you're working in a really fast-moving area, which brings together a whole number of disciplines, that can have opportunities, but also problems for people who are working at PhD level. So as you said, Viktoria, during my career, I've worked on a number of different programs. I've taught at every level. I've overseen programs as well. So it's always been a privilege, and it gives an opportunity to really look at education and in particular interdisciplinary education. So I've worked on courses from pre-university entry level to bachelor's, master's and PhD. and that includes PhD programs in a number of UK universities. One thing I've noticed while I've been examining PhD vivas across different countries is that many countries have a very unique take on what the PhD is. So I've examined in the UK, Canada, Australia, Netherlands, Germany, Estonia, Finland, and every country has its own set of traditions associated with the PhD. For example, some countries like Germany and Netherlands, PhDs often work as research assistants. The viva is quite different at the end. In the US, people tend to work as teaching assistants. In the UK, they're very much viewed as students. And that means there are different expectations of the students in those different countries. So if you go to the next slide, this shows you some of the research that we do. And some of our research themes that the PhDs have an opportunity to engage within. And I think later on, we're going to be talking about some of the topics that's on my final slide. So these are some of the themes I'd like to discuss later.
Many thanks.
So now it's my pleasure to introduce the third panelist, Armin Weinberger. I also know Armin since I was a PhD student, as we were working on similar research interests in the field of computer-supported collaborative learning. So it's also my pleasure and very special to introduce him also. I've also been discussing with him recently the challenges of interdisciplinarity in our community. Armin is currently head and founder of the EduTech department at Saarland University. Probably he will also mention his main topics later. So just mentioning now that he has been collecting awards for top-cited articles, outstanding articles, good teaching, presumably also supervision of PhD candidates, has been the most frequent author at the International Journal Computer Supported Collaborative Learning for a period, and is very active in our community, coordinating special interest groups, the CSCL community of the International Society of the Learning Sciences, and is now a member of the executive committee of EARLY. So, Armin, thank you for joining the panel.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm gonna frame my little presentation a little bit comedically, but it's up to you to identify the more serious points. I hope I just finish it in the last minute before this, and Mikhail has found them. So yeah, again, a bit of a comedic take, but please identify the points, and I try to be quick. So I was studying in Munich, and then I did an Erasmus exchange in Twente in the Netherlands. And I was interested in TEL, and one underlying principle of the education that I have received was that I was trusted early on with big challenges, overburdened maybe with big challenges, like also working on a virtual seminar, even publishing on it. And then, of course, I was lured into doing a PhD with promises of how that would advance my life. And I was thinking, oh yeah, I write a little bit more of science and then everyone likes it. And that would be awesome. Yeah, I'm interested. And the PhD studies were then partly project work and then work at the department itself, included teaching, of course, and lots of other things to be done. And then finally, in the last year of this 3-4 year period, my mentor allowed me to focus on the PhD. And that included, of course, then also, again, presenting at the big conferences right away. Again, this principle that I would like to discuss of being challenged with playing with the big boys and girls, so to speak. And then this other thing, this kind of like a little bit of a breakdown of saying, oops, I'm getting negative feedback. I'm being criticized. And that, as you know already, is the whole game of science, writing something, showing it to others, and then jointly laughing about it and make it better. And so some promises are not true. Yeah, there are no cookies on the dark side, and the dark side, of course, being becoming a PhD then. But some are. The PhD also ends at one point. That is a really nice thing about it. Everything is ending, and actually rather quickly, if you think about it. And in hindsight, it's actually a nice thing to be able to focus on one topic in particular and becoming an expert in that topic. So then the postdoc time was actually quite a happy time. Yeah? You've accomplished the PhD, you can reorientate, you can think about plan A of your life or plan B, go in different ways. I stayed in academia and thought, oh, this is really nice. I followed from Fischer to Tübingen and back to Munich. Life was busy, life is good. I then cleared my head and also thought, oh, there's also a private life. That's nice. Let's organize that as well. So there's a chance to breathe again after doing a PhD, which I want to point out to you. And of course, also my research then was kind of seen, which was fortunate. And now, of course, I'm here in advertising for doing a PhD myself. It's all happy. Come to the dark side, please. And then however, I had to move on. In the German system, it's that you have to move in order to become a professor. It's not that you're staying in one place and become a professor. So I moved for the career purpose from the beautiful town of Munich to, again, back to Twente. That was a coincidence. But there I also had some kind of breakdowns because I was happy with CSCL and this research field, and that's what I wanted to do and continue to do. But there I was working in a project and there was less focus on CSCL all of a sudden, new tasks, new responsibilities. So it was quite a privilege to work on something you're interested in, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So I needed to move on. There's more to investigate in my research field. And I became full professor at Saarland University. And that entailed quite some challenges as well, like building up a team out of nowhere, building up a master program, and that was the biggest thing that I didn't know beforehand. The biggest change for me is then the professors you're working with, they're having a different perspective. They're having responsibility also for you. And you don't have that up until that point. And that is quite a game changer, actually, and worth to think about. And then, of course, it also entails local and international politics or community work as you want to frame it. Now, of course, I'm on this dark side, as you may think, and now I'm faced with guys like you, PhD students, that have a different mindset, of course. Now I am old. Now I'm on this other side and trying to understand you, basically. So I'm basically here to learn, but not only to learn. I'm also happy to pass on some tips for the journey to guide you on this path. But actually, it's all not true. It's not really the dark side there. I really don't identify as a dark person. I think what we're doing is actually quite nice and ethically. I'm super happy with doing what I'm doing, finding research, finding new knowledge, or constructing theories or exhausting theories, and working with young people, teaching them. And actually being able to be driven by interest on these different topics that I'm currently investigating. And I believe that was the last slide. So thank you for your interest. Happy to discuss these points.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Armin.
Many thanks. And so with that, my pleasure is to welcome the final panelists, last but really not least. So Monica Divitini, we're very happy to have you here. Monica is a professor at the NTNU Trondheim in Norway, and she has researched technologies for cooperative work. And more recently, she has done a lot of research on the Internet of Things, on mobile and smart city technologies. I think also you've been interested in maker spaces and this fabrication. And especially, she has also worked on computer science education, including preparing teachers for teaching computer science and preparing teachers for using technologies as part of their teaching. So I think you have a multi-perspective on this whole issue of interdisciplinarity and teaching people to move in this interdisciplinary spectrum. We have also worked together, and I know Monica is a very competent and very engaged supervisor, so that's maybe also a very important perspective to bring to this discussion. So also, you, alongside your career, you have supervised and mentored students and researchers at different career stages. You have also been working with teachers who teach computer science and maybe also use technologies to teach. And so we're also looking forward to your thoughts on educating doctoral students in technology-enhanced learning and making a difference here. Many greet a warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much. I don't know for the other panelists, but your life, when is told by this two gentle researcher, looks much better than you yourself see. So, as Viktoria had mentioned, I'm a professor in cooperation technology and I'm a computer scientist. So, in a way, these are the glasses that I wear when I come into technology-enhanced learning, and it influences the way, the challenges that I perceive in the field. I also work in a university that was originally an engineering school. That again is part of the context that I live with, and in a way, I think that we always have to, when we think about challenges for PhD education, we have always to think about what is specific of the field and what comes from that field in a specific organization, because the solution that we may see in other areas, in other organizations, may not work in your own. So I think that is important to take this perspective into account. As Viktoria was mentioning, I'm interested in the use of innovative technology for learning, game-based learning recently. I've done work with support tools for supporting co-design, teacher training, and most of my effort now goes into computer science education, where I am associated also to the Norwegian Center for Excellence in IT Education, where we try to bring innovation into higher education, and the use of tools is clearly one of our focus. So if I think about the challenges that I've seen PhD facing either in my own organization, but also in other places, is that on theory, we all recognize, acknowledge that technology-enhanced learning is multidisciplinary, but are we ready for that? And I think that there are a number of challenges that, at least for us, comes from how do we assess the candidate that we employ in terms, for example, of requirement that are necessary. How do we train them? How do we assess them at the end? I think also that there is a gap that is important for PhD, but also for their supervisor to identify between what are the expectation and reality. What Armin was saying, there are no cookies on the dark side. And it's important for you as a PhD to find your place. I think that finding your place is probably one of the most painful process in a way that we see. I think that there is also a multicultural aspect that we are often underestimating. We are employing people from all over the world for working in learning, often out in schools in Norway, and often see that there is a cultural clash, and there are many things that we give for granted about what does it mean to learn, what does it mean to teach. Often when we talk about multidisciplinary effort, it means that you need to work with others. Often in the context of a large project, we see that may bring a benefit to your work, but what is left of your individual contribution? Because at the end, you have to deliver your PhD. I think that there is an issue, and this is not only about PhD, but I think that as a community, we should take more serious about the sustainability of technology-enhanced driven innovation, especially when you go out in school. I start feeling guilty because I go out with an innovation as a PhD. You go there with the best intention, and you know that you will not have the resources for sustain the change that you are bringing in. And also there is an issue of time frame. So I think I will go to the next slide, but I hope that we will be able to get back to some of these challenges. I think that there is also something we don't talk enough about, is that I say, Tal, you might think about completely different things in terms of what technology, what does it mean to enhance, what does it mean to learn? And it means different things to different researchers, even within the same community, maybe especially within the same community. We tend to neglect this understanding the basis for cooperation. And if there is something that I have learned in working in multidisciplinary setting, is that I remember the first, when I started my PhD, I was working with a sociologist. For 6 months, we loved each other. We were always agreeing until we really started going deeper, and we understand that we have given a completely different understanding of things. And then we have been fighting for the next 3 years in a good way. But so I just summarized these experiences with in a mantra for a PhD student. Be curious, I think, is a general asset when you start a PhD, but especially in TEL, don't be afraid to ask, but especially learn to listen. I think that we all like to talk and less to listen, but also reflect on what you hear and be brave. Take the leap, go ahead. I think that we have all experienced many PhD that just get lost into this overview of theories without having the background for doing it. And then, so you have to be brave, be ready to take the risk, go for action, and be ready to change your path if you find out that it doesn't work. And be generous. I think that is important when you are part of the community, that you share your result and you engage in the community, not only for your own benefit, but also for promoting the well-being of the community. And I think that we all acknowledge that well-being is something that we should take care of also as a supervisor. That's more or less what I wanted to say.
Many thanks, Monica, for this impressive overview. So I think you've already, your talk leads very well into the next phases of this discussion, where we're going to talk about only some of the few challenges. So I think also listening to you talk makes me realize that we need a few hours to unpack every single of these different challenges, some of which are, in my perspective, actually not maybe specific only to TEL, but some are specific to institutions, to cultures, and to all interdisciplinary research. Many thanks, Monica, and many thanks to all the other panelists for this great introduction into the topic.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you for the introductions and already raising some of the points and also some answers to the questions that we want to discuss with you now. The first one was already mentioned in some of the introductions and elaborated, especially in the introduction by Monica. And is this, how can we address from the training, and how can a PhD candidate navigate in this complex multidisciplinary field of TEL? Multidisciplinary in terms of different disciplines, but also probably the different perspectives that can be found within the individual disciplines as well. So again, how can we address this from the training? What should every candidate be aware of? What can be covered? What should be covered by formal courses, or what can be led to self-study or other approaches in the process of completing a PhD? So who would like to start answering this question? Yannis.
Okay, thanks. Really, interesting interventions up to now. I mean, and different perspectives. So my first suggestion is that most of the training and research in TEL can be covered through what I call activities, research activities at the group level that are joint and experiential, meaning not only through formal courses. In my prior slides, where I was talking about peer learning, joint authoring, joint experimentation, these are the different things that can be done in the frame of a group or of a broader project, as was suggested before, also by other panelists. Okay, and the second thing is that we talk on the one hand about mindsets, research paradigms and methods and traditions. Okay, and these are very difficult things to teach. Okay, but they can probably covered by these experiential activities. On the other hand, you may have concepts like HCI or learning and instructional theories, or basic technologies that are currently in use, or especially the notions and skills for prototyping and developing, for example, in Python, for the ones who do not have a technological background. So these are my two pieces of reflection that we probably discuss later if we have time.
Thank you, Ed. So the stressing the concept and also the experiential activities that complement the formal training. Monica.
So something that I like to point out is that between the formal courses and the self-study, there is a world. And I think that Dimitris is pointing also to that. There are seminars, there are research activities, share research activities. So I think that those are as important as these two extreme in a way. From our experience, I think that when it comes to formal courses, it's important to help students, to have courses that help students to understand the overall picture, because you can dive into something that is very relevant for you, but you have to get to that point where you know that that is relevant for you, that is a good theory, that is a good method. And I think that finding the right method, the right theory is where often PhD are getting lost. So this type of general courses that help to understand the overview and relate what you learn into your work is, I think, are very important. At the group level, for example, we have recently established a course on research methods that is strongly recommended to all PhD, and there we have both this overview, but also guest lecture that go towards specific methods, and then we have we ask the students to write a research plan adopting one of the methods that they have learned, so that it increases the relevance and help this transition from the overview to what you really need in your work. Of course, I think that this type of courses are challenging in a way that there is this old saying, it takes a village to educate a child. And here we need to have a community, because no one is expert in all the method, all the theory. So we need to be able to engage a community. And I think that that's where EATEL and projects like this are really very, very important because they provide exactly that type of access to different knowledge.
Thank you, Monica. So again, you're stressing the relevance of these overarching overview courses and also the connection with the community and also transversal actions like those promoted by IATEL. And Armin?
Yeah, so in our EduTech program, we basically have followed the philosophy of inviting social scientists to learn about computer science skills, learn a little bit about programming, and for computer scientists to learn a little bit about social science methods. But the point is that they're not turning into the other, actually. And I would advise against studying two things at once and becoming experts in two fields, really. But the point of what we're doing is to being able to work with the other field, being able to understand the other field. Because there is this notion within our field that we're working in a sweet spot of overlap of different disciplines, and you need to have the skill of playing that field, not the skill of the other side necessarily. Not always easy to follow up to that promise, but that's what I would advise, or at least I would advise to be careful about thinking, okay, now I'm really switching sides of sorts. Not that it would hurt, but in terms of knowing how to program or knowing how to do research empirically and such, but you need to specialize, you need to become an expert, and you need to think of what that means for you in particular.
It's good that you also explain it from that perspective, that they are really like different perspectives and approaches that depends on your the starting point as a discipline. This nicely connects with the second question. Maybe we can address it now because it's tightly connected, and we continue the discussion on this. Allison, you okay? You wanted to also go? Oh, okay, go for it.
Yeah, so I said that I had 5 things that I wanted to emphasize, because I think this multidisciplinary world that we have in our field is quite difficult to navigate. So 5 things. The first is to encourage students to write from the very beginning, because I think that many students, or at least the students that I've supervised, can find this quite intimidating, because they're writing across different disciplines, and what one might write in social science can be very different from how you might write in computer science. Combined with that is the fact that our students are from all over the world. So they're often writing in their second or third language, and that can also be intimidating. So encourage them to write, ideally, papers. We have an upgrade process, so all our students register for masters at the beginning, and then they have to upgrade to documents, so they have a mini viva for that. And the reason for that is because if they do leave after the first year, at least they have a master's, though most of them do complete. There are a lot of challenges around that, but there are payoffs as well. The second is to create opportunities to help them to work on funded projects. In some countries, this is what PhDs do, but not everywhere. So give students opportunities to work on projects and let them see all the tacit knowledge which is involved in research, which is very important. The third is to explain from the get-go how, as a supervisor, you intend to work with the students, so that the expectations around supervision are quite clear. So for me, for example, I like to work as a collaborator with PhDs, but that's not how all supervisors work. Setting expectations is really important, because students can become very anxious. The students can forget supervisors are working across different projects, and the supervisors can forget that the PhD is the main project for the students. It's very important to spend time with them. And that takes me on to the next one, which I think is possibly the most important, is put yourself in the student's position. It can be easy for supervisors to forget what it was like to be a PhD ourselves. But, students have got issues like I've just come to a new country. How do I set up a bank account? How do I find somewhere to live? How do I meet friends and so on? How do I not feel like a research imposter? So getting to know the student and helping them with their physical and mental well-being, I think, is important. And also helping students to understand what can be learned on the formal courses as part of the PhD program, and what really needs to be learned while they're on the job or if they're actually doing the PhD. I think that's very important as well. So those are some of the key issues that I've faced and learned through trial and error.
Thank you, Alison. No, indeed, what you mentioned connects with also the experiential learning that was mentioned before by Yannis, by participating in different kind of activities, including research projects when possible, and also the relevance of supporting, accompanying, no, and scaffolding the process at different levels, not only content-wise. And thank you for all the answers. We move to the second question that really builds on this previous one.
Yeah, so maybe let me reshape this question a little bit. All of you have really impressive and inspiring thoughts on how to support students who we have assumed to mostly have a single disciplinary background in the discussion so far, and how you could support these students navigate the multidisciplinary environment and how you're doing this. Most of your answers stressed agency and what is your direct sphere of influence, or a lot of our direct sphere of influence as PhD supervisors. So one question that interests me is, what are your thoughts on what educational institutions need to be able to do in order to support this? I'm thinking here, for instance, on procedures to admit students with different backgrounds. I'm maybe also thinking here of making the multidisciplinarity appear a little bit earlier in multidisciplinary master study programs, and maybe also your thoughts on whether this is actually even desirable, following up on Armin's comments that it's also very important. Also, Monica, I think you stressed that too, that it's necessary to know where your expertise is and where your position in this multidisciplinary field is, since it's not so easy to be an expert in everything, and certainly not at the beginning of your career. Yeah, Yannis?
Okay, just following up. I mean, as we proceed, I can find out that, you know, several ideas converge and even expand what we were saying. Okay, so I do not have formal proposals for administrations, okay, because this is quite a different institutional issue that I don't have very clear solutions. You know, Alison mentioned, you know, before that, you know, that differences among countries, among, you know, continents or whatever, and this is true. There has been this joint initiative to create a doctoral education programs in European Union. Okay, so they have some common elements, but multidisciplinary programs are extremely difficult to have. So just a couple of ideas. As I mentioned before, you know, living together at different levels is the most essential element. So creating the conditions so that people can live together is essential, and this can be done in the individual level, you know, doctoral student versus supervisor, or in a research group level, project level, as was mentioned before, and also the community level. And the community level has been also suggested by Armin, for example, or, you know, at the EATL level or the CSCL community and so on. Okay, because as mentioned before, tacit knowledge is probably the most difficult thing to get. So what can be done? Several ideas have been mentioned. Have specific short courses, have seminars with hands-on activities, provide examples, good practice examples, provide real experiences. And also something that can be handled in different ways is how you can create a common glossary and terminology. This is what, for example, we have done 25 years ago when we started our multidisciplinary group. We had to create even a formal glossary in order to understand each other, okay?
Many thanks. Yes, on the institutional side, I would say that also at least needs to be accommodated the possibility to formally acknowledge such learning experiences. Allison.
Hi, so the universities that I've been working with are trying to have cross-faculty supervision of students so that you do get, for example, education students coming together with computer science, coming together with health science, and so on. And that fits into that space, which brings together the different disciplines. And I think that is fantastic. It's exciting. It gives the PhDs insight into the different cultures and priorities of each of the different disciplines. But that can also be quite stressful for students, because I try to say to students, when you're reading papers, think about the language that's used, the structure of the paper and so on. Don't just read the content, but look at how the research is done and how the findings are presented and so on. And of course, that's very different across the disciplines. And that's where it can be quite challenging for the student, because they can get different messages. And I think as supervisors, it's really important for us then to be able to step in and to help the students to understand how they can walk that line in helping to carve out a new field. So yeah, super exciting, but also quite difficult for students as well.
Monica?
I think that I've learned that organizations are not easy to modify. So I think that it may be difficult to change this admission requirement or whatever. So I think that really this possibility, the work that IATEL, that you're doing with this project of creating awareness of where are these multidisciplinary centers, or maybe where other groups are, what are they doing, is really critical, because it helps to create maybe the possibility for students to go and visit, to engage with different PhD. So I think that that is critical. Maybe not change the organization, but building bridges that help this mobility and this knowledge exchange. When it comes more specifically to your question and what we can do with as a community and as supervisor, I think that we have to become better teaching PhD students to fail. I think you should have presented us telling them how many projects have we been rejected, how many times have you been crying on papers that you thought were fantastic and were rejected. Because I think that when you come into a multidisciplinary field, as Allison was saying, it's difficult to write, to find the right way of writing for different audiences. Sometimes you do things and they don't work out. So I think that really, how do we fail? And as a community, we are very good at sharing our success and not our failure. And and sometimes there is something to learn. I think of one of a paper that I wrote many years ago that is still getting citation. Is titled "Learning from a Fiasco," that tells you how it went, the experimentation that we did, that we thought was such a good idea, and it didn't work, but we have learned from it. Sometimes you cannot learn much, but just go ahead. So that's something that I would like to see more.
Many thanks. So I'll take that personally under advisement the next time when I introduce panelists, but of course with prior inquiry. And I also think that your answer goes a little bit into a different direction into what institutions, how institutions are working, but it is a reflection on how we as a research community are also working and what kind of output we value and how we even think about each other and how we introduce ourselves. Yannis, you're wanting to say something. I would like to give maybe precedence to Armin, or is it okay for you to collect your thoughts for a minute?
I pause.
You pass. Yannis, you get the speaking time.
Just,
I'm very happy to do that.
Yeah, just a follow-up thought in our very limited time. Simply at the institutional level, I have seen that there are some chances of moving from a doctoral program to the doctoral school, okay? So this is something, activities that are not given by the supervisor or by the doctoral program, but by the doctoral school that has more chances of this interfaculty or interdiscipline way. And also to agree and underline the idea of learning from the failures, these productive failure stuff, and also to emphasize that in our field, this is something especially relevant, that stress, it is extremely stressful moving from one discipline to another. So the teaching to or learning how to create less stress is very relevant. So multidisciplinarity can be very creative, but at the same time can be extremely stressful.
Many thanks, Yannis. Davinia, I would hand over to you.
Okay, so the third question is really about again, the challenges, but also more especially about the challenge that had to do with the fact that TEL is a fast-moving field, so that both the technology and education, and the technology has learning, educational technology is therefore moving fast, and this often leads to education lagging years behind not only research but even behind practice. So how this challenge should be addressed both on doctoral and master education for individual students and the design of the programs themselves. And maybe we can also take the opportunity of answering to that question if you also want to mention another challenge that maybe has not been covered so far in the discussion. So the challenge of being a field that is really fast moving, probably other challenges that you would like to stress. So who would like to start answering that question?
I can start again, although Armin might be the one. Simply to say that, just to underline that in our field, I think that there is a misconception that technology research is moving fast. This is not true. Technology is moving fast. This is true. And the other point is that, as was mentioned also before, about adoption practice, that is a very relevant issue, especially in TEL research. I would say that one of the aspects that should be especially supported is this collaboration, not only between disciplines, but also with practitioners, with the practice. And this is especially important because, for example, engineers do not have a very clear idea of what's going on in schools. they have their own experience, being students, but this is not enough. And therefore, this is an especially relevant aspect to be taken into account. And I guess that Armin is ready now.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay, if I may, yeah. So there is a bit of a misconception of students or people in this field, because the field is driven by an enthusiasm of what technology can do for education. And so that means that people are thinking, let's change education and let's do interesting things in education. And that's, of course, a wonderful thing to do. And so then people think, okay, let's innovate through research and then create things. But actually, these things are separate things and they should be kept apart. So inspiration for innovation is coming from different things, from different disciplines and from theory and from practice. Things like flipped classroom or something like that is not coming from science. It's coming from practice. We are then following suit and maybe investigating on that, and that's fine. Then there are things that are not coming from computer science departments. They're coming from Microsoft. Let's be real. They're innovating incredibly much. And to think that science is kind of in control of all the things that are happening and all the developments, that's ridiculous. So what you need to do as a scientist is to develop theories, to exhaust theories, to build models, to crash models, to build better models. And then this world that you're contributing to, the conceptual world, that has then, in the long run, a very, very strong force, because the idea is changing reality, not through you, by the way, and not through your local practice of what you're realizing teaching. That's a different story. But because you gave birth to an idea. And that is interesting to think about what you are doing, what you are investigating is not for the here and now, but it's for the future. We are anticipating things that then become a reality, that are then being picked up by other researchers or being picked up then ultimately maybe by practitioners or not. This trickle down also doesn't work always. But what you're really constructing, apart from the bits and bytes, apart from the tangible environments that you're constructing, what you're actually constructing is a world of ideas.
Thank you. Thank you for the contribution, Armin. I don't know if Monica would like to also provide an answer to this question, or we should check again
I think that it follows what Yannis and Armin were saying in a way. I think that if we want to achieve this result, we need to build a high flexibility in our programs, because you cannot have, for example, formal courses that are written in stone, or you need 2 years for changing the content. So you need to have a structure that assure qualities, but at the same time is also open, for example, recognizing this interaction that PhD student may have outside of your organization. Summer school, for example, other type of seminar, not always they are recognized by schools, by the organization. So in general, I think that flexibility is very important. And I think what was my mantra for PhD student probably also work for organization. This being curious, I think, is something that we should build into a program in terms of also being open to industry, to practice. It's what, for example, now in this Center for Excellence in IT Education, we are forced to do, because we are forced to listen, to go out and see what type of innovation is coming from the practice, and how can we both help to assess this innovation, but also to bring it forward in a more diffuse way. So that is, I think, also very important.
Thank you, Monica. So, there are important messages, I think, in your answer. So there was Armin saying, okay, let's not forget what are the aim of research, of generating new knowledge, models, explanations, but also, and reinforced by your contribution, Monica and Yannis, let's not forget the contact with the real practice and the practitioners, and also the players, so the stakeholders in our, let's say, community from society and actual practice perspective that includes also, for example, technology providers, which are having more and more participation and role in the field from a practitioner perspective. So with that, I pass the word again to Mikhail to see if we have any last minute comment or question.
I wanted to ask actually you, Davinia and Viktoria, if you have any concluding words.
Maybe Viktoria, I was already kind of concluding that question and the perspective of challenges.
Yeah, from my side, I'd really like to take this time to thank all the panelists for your thoughts. I found that very inspiring thoughts on many ends. I think most of the discussions were on what we can do as PhD supervisors. I will also continue reflecting on what institutions can do, or what maybe also the research community, Monica, as you have pointed out, as the village that surrounds maybe not even only doctoral students, but that also surrounds us in our practice as researchers, can actually do to accommodate and grow technology-enhanced learning or educational technology, or however it's called, as a multidisciplinary research field with maybe some less fragmentation, while still having clear profiles and different perspectives. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for both our panelists and our moderators. Let's give them virtual applause.